This is the Mettle podcast, and I am your host, Coach Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mettle podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. And welcome back to the Mettle podcast. And I'm here with my guest today, Coach Jostes of Maroa Forsyth, the Trojans, and a storied program, Central Illinois, 2A level that's done really well. I've gotten, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Coach, but I got state champs in 06 and 2012 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that 5? Is that 6 state runner-ups?
That one we're not as excited about, but yeah.
Oh, come on. I understand, but hey, I mean, yes, it's that's rough though, right? You think about 6 times you've gone and had I don't know what your combined records for those years are, but they got to be phenomenal, right? And then to end the last year or the last game on a loss, right? It's got to be like I've worked with a lot of kids and I ask them about like their favorite moment in sports and their least favorite moment. And a lot of them end up being the same game, right? They'll be like, oh, we made it to the state championship. We did this, but then my worst moment. And it's like, it's just, and that's just it, right? It's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And they can all happen within 3 hours of each other.
Correct.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit, just give me a little, I mean, I've followed your program for years being from an Illinois guy and you guys have done so well. And I used to be at a school that that competed against you guys. So I've seen that. And at least I was there cheering on the team that beat you one of those years at DMAC where I was there. So so I've been following your progress, but tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and a little bit about Coach Jostes.
Gotcha. I'm a 1992 Macon High School graduate. No longer exists anymore. And then I went on and I graduated from Millikan in 1997. And I have a master's degree from University of Illinois Springfield in 2005. And I have a master's degree in hyper, which is health, youth, PE, and recreation from a online school actually. So that's kind of my background educational wise. I'm a father. You have 3 great kids, so they're all getting older now. But 23 is Reed, and Wade is 21, and then I have a daughter in our high school right now, and Bryn is a junior here and is 17. Been married to my wife Heidi. We were high school sweethearts. We grew up about a block away from each other, and so been married for 25 years now. And this is when this year's over, it'll be the finish of year 24 in Maroa. So they took a flyer on a 25-year-old head coach that had no business being ready. So
yeah, no, and that was going to be my next question. So you said how many years have been coaching?
So I've been coaching for 27. This will be my 24th year. Well, I just finished my 24th football season.
What did you do? So you only did it a couple years before you were head coach at Maroa. What were you doing first?
So I was an assistant coach at Sullivan High School. So
okay.
Sullivan Redskins for 3 years there, and did a little bit of all of it. I was actually a football, basketball, and baseball coach and assistant athletic director. So yeah.
Yeah. Busy guy. What drew you into coaching? I mean, obviously, it seems like something you wanted to do right out of college. So, what drew you to coaching?
My background's probably a little unique in that my coaches were always my mentors. They were always my people that I. Sorry, we have
Hey,
announcements going on.
you're at a school. You got some announcements going. I get it.
Yeah. But anyway, that my coaches were always my mentors, my role models. Many of them I still talk to today, and helped raise me into the man that I am today. And I always knew it was something I was going to do. I originally thought I was going to go into law enforcement. And when I graduated with an associate's degree, before I went to Millikan, I wasn't even 21 yet, so I couldn't carry a gun and knew I wanted to coach. So I got into this part of it, and before it was all said and done, I decided I wanted to do that full time. So wasn't originally the plan, but quickly became the plan.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, I got into coaching. It wasn't my original plan, but it's something about, like you said, when you have those mentors growing up that were like really guided you, that it becomes on this, I don't want to say a fallback, but it becomes this something that's always in the back of your mind that you're like, ah, man, I really liked what this guy was doing for me. I could do that. I could help mold other young men and women and yeah, it's easy to get into that and see the benefit of that. So, talk to me about those first few years. Like you said that they took a flyer on a young guy. Usually, you don't get great situations uh, early on. So your first year was, what would that have been?
2000, 2000.
2000.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm looking at your stats here. Your first runner up was 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. So your
Yeah.
first year was 2000. What were the first few years like?
So we went 1-8. When I got hired for the job, as you said, there's not. I don't think people were knocking down the door to come to
No.
Maroa, or wouldn't even have been in the finalist list. I'm sure, but we went 1-8. I remember when my superintendent hired me, and he said, "You're probably not going to win a game this, first year, but." You have some good young kids coming, and he was super. Steve Stanger, the guy that hired me, there wasn't a lot of expectations to turn it around, immediately. I think Maroa had been to the playoffs. Like they were traditionally very strong in the late 70s and early 80s. Had been to the state championship a couple times, but it had kind of fell on tough times. I think they'd been to the playoffs 3 times in the prior 20 years, before I took over the job. So that first year, I learned a ton on the fly because, of course, when I applied for the job, I had all of the answers and how easy
Oh,
this was going to be to turn it around. And you quickly find out that's not the case. And at that time, we were in the Ocala Valley Conference, and so you had St. Teresa and Central A&M, which were
yep.
playing for state titles. I mean, Mark was in his heyday at the time
Yeah.
when I took this over. So, we were just trying to compete. Quickly found out you can't make up for what we now call a 5-year process for our kids. That begin in 8th grade. You can't do that in one summer. I got hired in June, also. So
You didn't even know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that helps. So hit the ground running, and those kids are the backbone of what eventually our program has became. The next year, really recruiting our hallways and getting kids out. Because my first year, we started with 37 kids, and only 26 made it through the season. We played freshman, JV, and varsity with 26
Hmm.
kids. Never missed a game. So some of those kids I should be fired for child abuse. They would play on Thursday night, Friday night, and Monday night. I had kids that started all 3 levels.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Absolutely
that's
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the next year, we kind of took the next step. I only had 7 juniors and 7 seniors, like my first year, and so that next group, they go 4-5. We're playing for a chance to go to the playoffs, and the last game of the regular season is 4-4, and we are playing a really good ball club. But I mean, we had a chance to go, and I really felt like we had made up some ground in the physically, and our attitude. Kids were wanting to join the program, and numbers were up. Felt really good about where we were, and we had a great group of young men which actually ends up being the core of our 2004 team, which is the first, we end up going to the semifinals that year. But anyway, as sophomores, many of them knew they were going to be starting and major contributors on the varsity level. And I really felt like we would have stepped up and made even more gains and probably made the playoffs in that year. Um, but they all decide they're going to be basketball kids. So we lose
Mm.
like the majority of Drew McCool ends up being an all-state football player as
Ye-
a senior for us. He, is one of the best I've ever coached. But he's starting on the basketball team. I'm done. He was kind of the leader of the group, and that brought 4 or 5 of his friends with him, and we had lost a majority of what I thought were going to be our starters, and kind of regress and go 1-8 again. So we go one and
mhm.
eight, 4-5, 1-8. I'm really questioning some things. Why have I lost these kids?
Well,
And
and at this point, I mean, you went into a school they were really rolling with basketball, right?
yes,
When you're talking about recruiting the hallways, like that made sense because you had athletes walking in your hallways that were really good athletes, and seasoned athletes and good and and winners, right? And
yes,
they weren't playing football for you, which is oh, so hard.
it
It's so
is.
hard.
That's kind of where our offense has evolved. I mean, a lot of people make a big deal about, we score a lot of points and, sling the ball all over the yard. And that's really where it came from. I was a traditional run game coach, when I came in. And we had a kid named Nathan Chandler that broke our school record in catches and yards my very first year, even being an all run team because he was our best dude. So we had to get it to him. But, basically my 2 minute offense became a lot of our offense because we were down a lot, early. So we were getting into it and didn't just accept that we were going to get killed,
Right.
every week. And it just kind of evolved and that kind of digresses from that. But hey, if you're out here, we're going to get all of you the ball and do those things. So we did kind of slip in year 3, which was probably, I would say, without a doubt, my most difficult year. Um, really trying to convince those kids to get back out and what it was going to take. And without them, we couldn't turn the corner, but they had to be all in to do it. And again, as you said, basketball's still really good at that point. And we have since found that you can coexist, but it's hard to convince kids of that from the beginning.
And sometimes it's hard to convince coaches to coexist as well. That can always be a it's always a struggle.
It can be absolutely. I'm very blessed now in the situation. Our basketball coach is a former student teacher of mine. I actually reached out and said, "You need to come back and take this job," and
Yeah.
so it's been great. He's currently only 3-3, and he just knows the gig. Our team's going to be way better than that. At the end of the season, but he knows. Hopefully that he doesn't get to peak until after Christmas. A
Right.
lot of people have practiced 21 times before his first game, and he usually has 2 or 3 days, and it's tough to do that. But if you're playing your best basketball at the end of the season, does any of that really matter? And he accepts that. So
Yeah. No, and it's good. I'd rather have kids that are accustomed to winning eventually rather than having to win them. Yeah, it's
100%. When we're not having to
yeah.
coach effort,
Yeah.
it's the one thing we refuse to coach is effort and attitude. And if you're not having to do that, it is a big stepping stone. And the same thing goes for us. Our kids don't get any time off; they're right back into effort and attitude 2 days later. So
Yeah, and I think it's I always work with athletes and we always talk about the things you can control as an athlete and the things you can't. And it's funny the things you said there that are two things that I eventually get athletes to understand is those two things, effort and attitude, are the only things you can really control, right? As the athlete. But it's interesting that you say you don't have to coach, you don't coach those things and won't coach those things. And that's such a great, it's an interesting way to say that because, but it also means that you expect the kids to have that. You have to have that attitude and effort. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers, or perhaps you've heard it or even said the other version. Regardless, good coaches should not blame a lack of success on the players they get to coach. It's a lame excuse, and I'm sorry if that ruffles your feathers. But it's your job as a coach to develop your players. If your athletes lack skill or mental toughness, it's your responsibility to develop it. But how do you make today's athlete tougher without risking breaking them? Well, Mental Metal Coaching now offers professional development for coaches explaining how to do just that. The program is called Ember to Inferno, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. It teaches real tools and tangible methods that are proven to increase the mental health and toughness of athletes. The program is available as an in person seminar or as virtual small group coaching. Don't wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Contact Mental Metal Coaching today. Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Metal podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Metal podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle.
If we have to coach it, you're not going to be playing on the varsity field for us. And I'm not saying every kid steps into the program and has it, but they quickly learn the expectations. Hopefully, from a great group of senior leaders, that have passed that down from year to year. And I feel like our kids know that without those things, you're not in the conversation to get playing time. And again, we're not going to coach those two things. If we have to coach effort and attitude, we're in a lot of trouble that year. So
But it's interesting because you're not saying that those things don't exist, but it's like those things are created by the culture.
absolutely, yeah. When I say they absolutely better exist,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm not going to be the one that is dictating that. So typically, for us, a great group of we have a whole process we go through for our captains, and they do a really nice job of being the leaders of that effort and attitude are just going to happen. And we've had some great kids that really buy into that.
So when you talk about that first year, you were 1-8,
Yeah,
and you're talking about, but you say those kids are some of the backbone of the entire program, and I get that, but I don't think people understand a successful program like yours. One, as you know, it doesn't happen overnight, but you are literally building on the stepping stones of those kids that didn't get the success, but they laid the groundwork for the culture.
absolutely. When you talk about effort and attitude, I just told you I only had 26 total kids make it, but I wasn't coaching effort and attitude with those kids. And so the ones that were left that had little brothers or that were watching us play, and if you watched us play, we knew we were improving. It was just the Oka was a gauntlet right then,
Yeah.
and it was tough to win. And So those kids, many of them stand out. One of them is currently on my staff, Kyle Amidas, is on my staff right now from that original group. A kid that when I got here, he was 6'3", 225 pounds. He was clearly our guy, and he was a tight end, and it's like, well, we need a left tackle. So, and one of those kids that bought into it. Now, interestingly enough, my defensive coordinator just posted all these top 10 things for us. But his little brother, his name's Josh. And anyway, two of our top 10 all time biggest or most tackles in a season were his little brother. So he grew up seeing what his older brother, and that's where I'm talking about. Another one was Drew Sullivan. I've had four of the Sullivan boys. The last one, Bo, went on and played at the U of I. So he watched what Drew and Luke had to go through and not have any success. But those were the kids that never missed a weight session, were at every workout, at every 7-on-7, at every lineman challenge. And they learned that process. So even though they didn't have this success, I do feel like in the school, some of those kids had started to separate themselves by both not only being leaders, in our school, but also being the first kids into the weight room, the last kids to leave the weight room. Back then, we had two weights classes. When I got hired, I said we have to have weights classes,
Yeah.
during the day, and we had two. Now we have eight, and we only offer 8 hours a day. So, and we have 208 kids in there. I think we have 45 or something total. When I got here, our enrollment's a little bit bigger, but by like 50 total kids in the high school that we've grown, it's not like it's a ton. We're 350 kids. We had 208 in weights, right now. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I love, I think that, and I've been in the situation as an administrator where we've have helped hire football coaches, and there's this expectation, and I think rightly so, that a lot of times your football coaches, they're in they're a lot sometimes are the PE guys, and but if you get the football coach in there that's running the weights, like you don't have 200, like you got 208 kids in weights classes. Those aren't all football players.
I wish we had 208. Actually, I don't even know if I want
No, you don't
208
want that. No.
in order to manage. But yeah, absolutely. We try, I feel like our administration does a great job. They backed every vision that I've ever had, including when I first got hired. I told you this, the guy, Steve Stanger, said, "You're not going to win a game this year, probably." And we won one. So I really felt like we had, overachieved there. But when I got hired, they showed me a weight room that was like in a closet. And it had like one rack, and four kids could total be in there, at a time. And I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in this job if that's going to be, because the number one thing we're going to fix is this. And we had a wood shop and an industrial arts shop, and two huge spaces. And right off the get go, they combined those two, which was still a really nice space, and just give me the old industrial arts shop. And it wasn't maybe pretty. I mean, the stuff we have now at our facilities is top notch. I mean, unbelievable. But at that time, that was my first purchase. We bought two new squat racks, and that gave us three squat racks, and we had three benches, and we had a big garage door that you pulled up on a chain, and the whole thing would open up, and it was 200 degrees in there. And that's where it really started. I have some very fond memories of being,
Oh,
there. But the school, from the moment I was hired, has done everything they could do, or listen to the crazy ideas that I've had. And if you've been to Maroa Forsyth, schools and facilities, I don't think anybody really wants anything, from gym space to, we have two weight rooms, an athletic hallway that, we can run full 40-yard dashes in. I mean,
right.
yeah, it's just different. But I do firmly believe that athletics are the window to your school. Like, if you want people to look in the windows and see what's going on, and this is not a knock, we have some outstanding teachers in our district. I mean, my girls track coach that we're coaches with is one of the most brilliant ladies I've ever met. And I mean, high level math. I mean, like, super smart. But people aren't going to notice that she's won 5 WISE championships, just
Right.
because that's not what gets the publicity.
Yeah.
But so if you want to know that, the athletic department is, in my opinion, is the window to the school if you want people to look in and see what all the good things are going on. And
Hey, if
our
you want
school,
to, yeah, if you want to pass a referendum, win a state championship, right?
that is
I mean,
that
it,
that definitely helps. We've passed 3 since I've been here, so
that's
yeah.
it. It helps, and and I don't, and we can wax lament about society and if that's good and whatever, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that uh, athletics are just such a, I don't know. Yes, they're the window for your school to see it, but it is such a way for kids to experience the, I don't know, the joys and the regrets of life before it gets real.
Yeah.
Right? I like to say that athletics are controlled adversity for kids to
Yeah.
experience. Right? It's not life or death yet, but it's adversity.
And it feels
Every
like it right now. They don't
absolutely.
understand that it's not. Yeah. So,
It's and it's I get some I get some parents that I talk to and they're like, "Oh, I just tell my kid to go out and have fun." Well, it's not fun for them, right?
yeah.
It's I want them to enjoy it, but we can enjoy things that aren't quote unquote fun. We can enjoy hard work. We can enjoy the struggle. And
Yeah.
because that's what life is. And I think it's just such a good way. So that kind of gets me into this idea about adversity and about how, like, talk to me a little bit, especially you started coaching in 2000. So things have changed a little bit in the last 23, 24 years, especially maybe since the COVID year.
Yeah.
You have to put kids through adversity. You have to. But how do you do that in a way that it also doesn't do you any good to have them quit?
Yep.
It,
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, we talk about not coaching effort and attitude, and it's just kind of a prerequisite for us. But does that mean every ninth grader that walks through my door gets that? And that's absolutely not. And some of them still don't have it by the time they're seniors. They just don't. But it's not through lack of effort or us trying to put you in that nobody is going to care if you take the easy way out in life. It's not going to work out for you. I mean, hitting the lottery is a one in a bazillion chance, for you. So, other than that, there's going to be struggles. There's going to be struggles in your relationships. There's going to be struggles, you know, to get the job, to pay the bill. All of those things are struggles. And all you can control is effort and attitude. And even if they don't get it while they're here from 14 to 18, hopefully at some point it clicks in, these are things. And then going back to the athletics and the adversity part, sadly, I mean, this will be the highlight of some of our kids in our programs lives, and I don't take that lightly. I could have been that kid, so when I say that, at least there are highlights though. Like I have some kids that have been dealt, a rough hand, and they maybe use that as an excuse, longer than they should have, because ultimately you control your own destiny, But I have kids that have not been dealt, a
right.
rough hand. Also, I have plenty of kids that are not dealt a rough hand. They might think they have been, but I mean, 95% of kids would switch their situations,
Yes.
for them, and um, so even if it is, at least you have a highlight. There are so many kids walking the hallways of many schools, not just ours, that there's no highlight, of their day. So we try and make it a very special experience for our kids. We also try to make it, something where they really learn and propel themselves into being great husbands and fathers and employers and employees, into the future. But if you can't deal with adversity, you are going to struggle at some point in your life, no doubt about it. And I guess where I'm going with that is even my kids that maybe haven't had as successful after, they've struggled to find jobs or keep jobs or stay in relationships or multiple divorces or whatever it happens to be, right now. At least they do have some highlights though. I mean, I really feel bad for the kids that don't even have that to fall back to. And you hear people say all the time, I'd rather be, not all my highlights of my life weren't when I was in high school. Like it's a bad thing. And I'm not saying we want that to be, but some of these kids, at least it is a highlight in their life,
Yeah.
something they're proud of, something they worked hard for, and they do have something they can reflect on and be proud of. Now, obviously, we don't want that, but at least there are some benefits, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, and I think what's not being said is that there's a lot of kids that when you give them that experience and that highlight and that's something they worked hard for, there's a lot of kids that wouldn't go ahead and succeed without that, right?
Correct.
Does
Yeah,
it?
that
I
doesn't
mean,
even
it.
talk about the ones that I'm saying that do
Oh,
hit it out of the park.
that's
I'm
what.
talking about the ones that don't.
Yeah,
So,
and yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like it's never like athletics are this great way to it's this precursor for life, but it's there's a lot of factors, coach, right? It's not like, but I do think that there's, I mean, without a question, you're helping more than you get the ones that aren't really using it. But no, that's a different way to look at it. But I get what you're saying. Um, how do you guide them through that in the moment? In like because you can't just you and I are we're about the same age. We've been through some life, and we know that the things that the things that are really hard are the things that ultimately shape us and make us better. But a 16-year-old doesn't get that, right?
yeah.
How do you guide them through that adversity in the moment?
So we a couple things that we do that I think has helped that we've grown on over the years. So I have a character coach. That's his whole job. Like he couldn't tell you what play we run on offense or defense. Like he literally that's all he does. He's not at every practice, but he comes out 2 days a week. We give these life themes. We try and bring in some great guest speakers. We bring in a speaker every week that speaks to our team about what our theme was. And one of them may be overcoming adversity, or like on homecoming week, it's always treating women with respect. And we'll have somebody come in from, you know, whatever walk of life, the Dove Shelter or whatever, the boys hear these messages. And I've had that since about 2004. So I quickly saw it was something. It was more than what I could just do myself and still manage our team and call an offense and do all of those things. But it was definitely help trying to guide them to the direction. So he'll meet with our captains, and then he'll meet with any kids that the captains have ID'd, like, hey, Joe needs, help. Parents are going through a divorce or, whatever it happens to be. Try and help them through and deal with those situations. And we're really big about taking everything head on so we don't, try to avoid. I would say the most common thing for high school kids to do is they just push it off to the back burner. Like if something's bad, just push it away. Like don't.
I'm gonna say timeout
Yeah,
and take the word high school kids out,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
right? Yeah, and but if we don't let them if we don't teach them that when they're high school kids, they become adults that do that, right?
Correct. And we're really pushing. So you're absolutely right. But I mean, there are plenty of adults that do that. We're trying to make sure I'm not sending adults that are
Absolutely.
going to do it, so that we try and take everything head on. I think that's been great. Our character coach, and honestly, I've spoke on this, and I've had several coaches reach out and have since added them to their staff, and it opens up a lot more for you as a head coach to still be able to do all the other things. Like that in itself is a full-time job. So it's not like I'm trying to duck those duties. I also send a mental health survey out. Our kids get it every Wednesday. It's drudgery. It seems like the 3 minutes that it makes them take it, a Google form out, and they just rate how's your mental health, and like bottom line is like I'm about ready to blow, but then at the top, life's great, and there's obviously I got five categories there, and if you're middle of the pack or lower, I'm personally going to reach out to you. We're going to set up a meeting, try and again take these things head on, because it's easy to say, well, everything's piling up. So instead of doing my geometry and my anatomy homework, it's just like I can't do these; they're terrible, and I push that off instead of taking it head on. And now you've got yourself in a situation that it's harder to climb out of, and hopefully
Yeah.
they're able to learn those lessons. So those are probably the two biggest things that we do that I feel like helps our kids deal with adversity. And the biggest thing is realizing that even if it's hard, taking this problem, and a lot of times it's relationships. Like my mom and I aren't
Hmm.
speaking right now, or my dad, and it's like not talking to them is not going to fix this problem, and let them learn that through their early young relationships, in school as well.
Well, I think those are a couple things there that you're doing are fantastic, and I've followed your program for a couple of years anyway, and I know what's really interesting, and you like the expectations you have on your athletes in and out of season. Like you run a really good weight program, a lot of expectations. You put them through a lot of adversity. There's a lot on those boys, but you're doing things like a character coach, a mental health survey, and you're monitoring those things and helping them through those things. It is I think that is where things have changed a little bit, where coaches, I think coaches used to, a lot of football coaches maybe would run a program like you do with the expectations, but there was none of the stuff to help them out. It was
None of
like
that
sink or
touchy
swim.
feely stuff. So
Yeah, and I think that it what and a lot of people say, well, that kids are just soft and we have to do that. No, I think that without it, we end up creating the adults like we talked about that just ignore all the issues.
yeah,
That's not good for anyone.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I definitely give you kudos there for your doing that. And what I'm finding is when I talk to highly successful coaches and highly successful programs, they do this stuff.
Um, Talking about kids, just kids really haven't changed. Like they really haven't. In the like since I was a kid. Like I remember
No.
being a freshman in 1988. The same thing happens right now for my freshmen that are coming in 2024. They have the same fear, the same, I mean, that's all the same. And I honestly feel for kids because we didn't have social media. We didn't have a video camera in your hand at every moment or a camera. I mean, your cell phone can pretty much do anything, and then the world can see it. I mean, there are more stressors now than we ever. So I don't think kids have changed. I think technology. The world has changed, and kids are still under the same stress, the same fears, same anxieties that they always were. And I feel like if you don't help them address that stuff, I mean, coaching is really this. Like, I'd love to tell you our X's and O's are great at Maroa Forsyth, and I feel like we definitely give our kids an advantage with that stuff as well. But if you don't have a relationship with these kids, they're not doing all the things, as you said, we require our kids to do. And without that relationship piece, they're just not going to do it. There are a million other options that didn't really exist when we were kids. That is the other thing. Like I didn't have a lot of other options. Like you were going to be involved in sports or you weren't, and that was pretty much the two options. And now
Yeah,
there really are like just a lot of stuff for the kids to choose. So, in order for them to choose us, um, they do have to get something out of it, and that's that. Hopefully, after we get them in, we lose very few kids that I get out. The like after a kid joins our program, I don't lose very many of them.
it
We
yeah.
still have to convince kids to give our program a shot. On this year's senior class, I had a senior class of 18. Six of them had never played football before when they were in coming into high school, and four of them were first team All Sangamo conference this year. Four of those six were first team All Sangamo conference this year. So it's still a big deal to get these kids out, give it a shot, and do it. But like I said, our big thing is give us a shot, and then if it doesn't work out, then you can't say you didn't try, and we just
Yeah.
don't lose very many of those kids.
Well, and there's something to be so like, yes, from the outside looking in, it looks really hard and it looks like a lot of work, which it is.
Yep.
But to go through that with somebody and to have the support going through it, like Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, You have to forge your metal. And if you listen to the Mental Metal podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Metal podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your metal. Parents of athletes know that confidence and belief are fundamental for success. We want them to play without fear and without anxiety, but once those negative thoughts take over, it can derail years of work. Turning that anxiety into belief is similar to building strength and speed. It just takes intentional effort over time. Mental Metal Coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete. Well, that's a life lesson there too. If they can,
Yeah.
you know,
I can name 10 or 12 kids in our program, or maybe even more than that now that I've been doing it for 24 years, that honestly come out, and this is gonna sound terrible, like, but I mean it, and they know it. I mean, I call this out in our they came out for ball knowing they had pretty much a 0% chance to ever contribute or play for our team. And by contribute, I mean on Friday night under the lights in a huge game. But do they contribute? Yeah, they contribute every day, and that they know athletically, genetically, it doesn't matter how hard I'm working in this weight room. Like I've just like it's not going to be, and there's not a ton of those kids because we usually are saying if you live in here and do everything we say, you're going to be able to play.
right.
Those kids have the utmost respect, not only for me and our staff, but also the other kids on their team because they are out there every day with pretty much a 0% chance of ever contributing during a game. Do they contribute? Absolutely. They're our best practice players. They're our best teammates. They're the guy running to grab, a Gatorade for somebody. They're the ones that's cheering when the other kid scores the touchdown. I mean, and those kids are so huge. But how hard is it to be that kid in your
And
program? I mean, and
and
so hats off to those kids. And fortunately, we get some of those every year. I mean, one kid right now in my program is standing out to me. He hasn't missed a day in like 3 years, and it's just not like going
how
to happen for him on the game field. But everybody on our team respects the heck out of him, and we love the heck out of him for being around. So
and those are the kids that you would have no hesitation giving a recommendation to for whatever job. Like those are
absolutely,
going to be fantastic human beings, fathers, all those things, which is
yes.
that's
Which
what we're
is
trying to
goal
do.
one. That is the only goal. And if we
That
win some games along the way and give them some confidence, I mean, that's really what it's all about. Being confident enough in yourself that you can be successful. So, and
well,
hopefully we're able to teach that.
yeah, I find those go a lot together. Like if you say if I find a coach that says, "Well, my main goal is to raise guys right, make athletes, make good humans, do things right." It's funny how often that wins kind of come with that.
Yeah.
It's they're not unrelated, coach, and you know that. um, I really enjoyed, and I'm coming back to something you said early. Uh, how you recruited these basketball players and these athletes, and it also you you literally changed offenses to, I don't know if I want to say accommodate, but I know that the kids probably enjoy it more. Kids love throwing the ball around.
Absolutely. Now, that being said, we just got whipped by a Wilmington team that didn't throw it one time. And so, is there more than one way to do that?
Yep.
Like I have kids that would not play for Wilmington, and Wilmington just won a state championship. But I've got probably three receivers on my team that would have had zero interest in doing that because they were
Yeah.
not going to be a running back. and basically their tight ends were tackles, and then the quarterback honestly pitches the ball and lead blocks every
Yeah.
play. Like I have 3 or 4 like all area, all conference, all state kind of kids that would not play. Now, if they grew up there and went through that from 4th grade to now, maybe they are, because he's doing a great job promoting what he does.
Yeah.
I just know at Maroa, that would have been a really long turnaround for me, and I'm not sure I would still be here, because if we didn't get our dudes out and we were not getting them out, then we weren't going. So there is a million ways to skin a cat. So I'm not saying mine's the only way. In our town, the way that our communities are built, because let's be honest, 80% of my kids are from Forsyth, 20% of the kids are from Maroa. I need and this will come out old school, but like grew up on the wrong side of the tracks also in Macon, Illinois. Like we need our kids that still know how to scuffle a little bit and do those things. They can't all.
It's still football, coach.
So I need the mix, and I'm glad we have it. But you still got to have a few of those kids that you're still a little worried about what they do when they leave on Friday. And we have those. You don't want a team full of them, but that's part of coaching too, is to get those kids to be and conform and buy in and make sure it's important to them and so anyway, that kind of
I just think
digress.
I think there's a lesson to be said there for a lot of times, like as coaches, we come in, even a young coach, like, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to, and it's like, you got to have a little bit of a nimble mind and how you want to, like, it's not all my way or the highway. Like let's see what works for the kids and let's see
If
what we
I
can.
have an X and O idea for you, my number one X and O idea would be to tell you to not have an X and O idea. Like, if you're going to be in a public high school with 350 kids like we are, and we're not getting to pick them, and I just got to deal with what walks through the door. You better be really flexible. When we had Jack Hockaday, and you mentioned,
Yeah.
Deer Creek, when I had that, we were still in a spread, but we ran our quarterback 85% of the
Mm-hmm.
time, and he wasn't throwing it. Now the other kids still thought we had a chance to, and we still were able to keep our kids, but we were about as power run team as you could be, you know, still under our same
Yeah.
concept. I mean, we're running buck sweep and doing all of the things that any wing T coach would have done. We just did it to fit our personnel a little
Sure.
bit better. But and so if you're not flexible on that, you better be able to pick your kids. So,
Yeah.
and we're not able to do that. So,
No, and I think it's just a great,
so
yeah. So a couple last questions here. Just what if you wanted your program that you've built over the years to be known for one thing, like what do you want people, what do you want it to be known for?
that's a great question. Um, I mean, you could go back with any, we have mission statements and, all of those. And, our mission, my mission statement is very, very simple: make better men. So, but that is such a generic answer that I don't want that to be what it is. I think the things as a football coach that I would be most proud of is I think our kids are really hard nosed compared to a spread team like that you're talking about. Like I feel like our kids will take on any challenge, and really that's probably what I want them to be known for. We don't care. We've played power run teams, we've played spread teams, we've paid. Our kids will line up and play anybody, anytime, anywhere, and so I just think their grit would probably be what I would want to be known for the most. It would be interesting to hear someone else answer what they thought we stood for, rather than. I mean, like I said,
There's a question for your mental health survey, right?
yes,
Just to kind of
yeah,
get an idea.
yeah. What do you
Um,
want to be known for? So,
yeah, I think that, but I heard that in the interview when you talk, yeah, because right there you're talking about taking on any defense or offense or whatever. But then you talked about how you want your boys to handle all problems head on.
yeah,
Um, and like, well, what it says on my shirt here, Mettle, Mettle, is to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. And it's not about running from adversity. It's about saying, oh, that's adversity. Let's go get it.
Yeah.
And knowing that you get better. And so I love you're saying things like grit, but then actually just seeing it
Yeah.
and using it. It's great stuff, Coach. Last question. I always ask, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
I think you covered a lot, honestly. What should we have covered that we didn't? I really feel like you were you hit about all aspects of our game. I'm not sure that I have anything left.
That's that. Then I guess I did my
You
job,
did
huh?
your job,
So
right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, Coach, it's been great having you on the podcast. I'll keep paying attention, watching. Um,
I got 6 more, so
you got 6 seasons left.
6 seasons left.
Is
So
that the? I mean, you got it. You've got it all planned
that'll
out,
be
huh?
30 years, and I'll have given it all I had for as long
Yeah.
as
Well,
kids will be down
here's
and
the
out of school, and it'll be time for a beach somewhere. So
what beach? What's the,
south somewhere. I'm not sure where yet.
well, I
So
know south. You're not gonna
yes,
go.
well,
Yeah.
that's very true also. But yeah, okay, Alabama. If I had to pick right now,
There you
I'd say
go. Nice,
so. Yep,
nice. Little Gulf Shores.
yep.
Enjoy it,
You hit
Coach.
it.
It's
Good stuff.
been great having you on. I appreciate it, and good luck in the off season, and good luck next season.
I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of
You
fun.
bet. You bet. Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
You can't make chicken salad out of chicken feathers, or perhaps you've heard it or even said the other version. Regardless, good coaches should not blame a lack of success on the players they get to coach. It's a lame excuse, and I'm sorry if that ruffles your feathers. But it's your job as a coach to develop your players. If your athletes lack skill or mental toughness, it's your responsibility to develop it. But how do you make today's athlete tougher without risking breaking them? Well, Mental Metal Coaching now offers professional development for coaches explaining how to do just that. The program is called Ember to Inferno, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. It teaches real tools and tangible methods that are proven to increase the mental health and toughness of athletes. The program is available as an in-person seminar or as virtual small group coaching. Don't wish for mentally tough athletes. Build them. Contact Mental Metal Coaching today. Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Metal podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Metal podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. Towards the beginning of that interview, Coach Jostes made a comment about his life being a little bit different in the beginning, and he talked about the mentors in his life being coaches. And at the time of that interview, I realized I was listening, and I'm like, I don't understand how that's much different. Uh, a lot of young men as athletes growing up have coaches as mentors that lead them, and I mean, a good friend of mine now is my high school basketball coach, and I consider him a mentor, and I know he molded me and did a lot of things that I'm very grateful for. So I thought, well, where's he coming from? And what you didn't hear in that interview, I had a conversation that went later with Coach Jostes is, and I won't get into all the details, but he had a less than ideal or less than normal upbringing and relationship with his father, and so what he meant by that was the coaches in his life were really the only role models he had, the only people that really helped him become the person he is. And if that's not a an advertisement for keeping going and keep doing what you're doing as a coach. I don't know what is, because we know that how important athletics are and how important coaching is, but when we hear about a story like that of where he taught, I mean, he's a very successful coach, very successful dad, very successful father, uh, very successful in his community, and he has coaches that helped guide him. To thank for that, uh, the amount of influence and responsibility, frankly, that a coach has is immense. And I think again, it's a reason to keep going and keep doing what you're doing. Uh, some of the really interesting things, very cool things that I picked up from that interview. First of all, phenomenal interview, and I had a feeling it would be. As I mentioned, I have followed the program for a long time. One of my best friends, Eric Smith, they live in that district, and his sons have played for Coach Jostes. So I've paid attention, and I know what kind of effort is expected, and what sort of time is expected in Coach Jostes's program. Uh, but I didn't know, and I know obviously you heard some of the stats on how successful they have been. Uh, and I don't know why. I think it's because I grew up in the area, and I have played against, or I'm not played against, but had a with a district that was a competitor of them. And you always have preconceived notions about coaches or programs and this and that. And, I said, hey, I'm going to get on. And he has been so successful. I have to have something to learn from him. So I got him on here, and I really didn't know him much. And I'm just so pleasantly surprised in his answers and the way he runs his program. I think the first thing I want to point out is that, and this happens to most coaches, very, very few young coaches jump into a great situation. You don't jump into a well functioning, upstanding program. More than likely, you are leaving a program following a legend, possibly in one situation, which maybe if it is a good program, you have a legend to live up to. That's a whole nother thing. But more often, you have to start with a program that it's what Coach Jostes had, where somebody's saying you're probably not going to win any games, or you're not going to win many. And that's fairly normal. But as coaches, we often dream about being impactful and building this program and having a community support us and being a source of pride of the community. And it's a daunting task when you start with a program that is not expected to win any games, whether it's football, basketball, volleyball, whatever. It is, you are starting in situations that are very difficult, and you have to start from the ground up. So it's refreshing to see, as we can look at a guy like Coach Jostes, who's at it 25, 26 years or whatever, how long he's been doing it and how many years he's put in. And we can see the results of staying the course, because it didn't start that way. Probably I'm sure he's gotten better at things and decided to do things differently, but a lot of I'm sure his values and some of the things that he thinks really expensive, or think is really important in building a program, was there on day one, but the culture wasn't there. The players that weren't there yet, and the people buying in weren't there. I love the part about him giving credit to those kids that went 1-8, 4-5, 1-8 again, that they are the backbone of the program. And they're the first ones. I love how he keeps saying stuff about we have our kids face stuff head on. And if you listen to this podcast, if you listen to me at all, you know that I'm all about that, facing things head on and just meeting adversity and how important that is. Well, but we often look at teams that are state championships or state runner-ups and be like, oh, those guys are successful, or these gals are successful. right? They really face the adversity. There's a lot of teams out there that go 1-8 or don't win any games. And those kids on those teams have to face just as much adversity. They just don't have the benefit of having the culture and all the people coming out to support and having all the time in this one program. They're facing adversity and they may be doing their best, but they don't have the quote unquote success that we want. But it doesn't change the fact that those kids are learning how to face adversity and do their best. And that's the whole point, is to be able to do that and build those. He said we like to build better men, and I just love that idea of that. That's it's not about winning so much, and more about creating good human beings, and that's really should be the goal. But I also loved what, and this is one of the things that really caught me by surprise, is I know what kind of offense Maroa Forsyth runs. It's a pass offense, like they spread a lot, they do some things, but I also know that he runs a really tight ship and expects a lot from his players. And I guess I was surprised to hear him say when he came in, he wanted to be this power run team, and he realized that that didn't fit his kids, that didn't fit his personnel, and didn't fit the kids, as he said, that were walking the hallways. And so, in order to get those kids out or get those dudes out, I love how he says that, he changed the way he was coaching. He changed his strategy. And that is for a young coach that is a really, and he's a hard nosed guy. And he is the head coach, and it's easy to be, hey, I'm in charge and my way is the best way. For him to look at it and go, hey, I need to change some things. For a young guy, I think we cannot skip over that fact that he did that early on. Now, the trick is, how do you find that consistency, and how do you mix that with, what your identity is, that consistency you want to have, and how do you also add in that adaptability? And that's why not everybody does this and does it well, because it's not that easy to do. What do we have to keep? What are the non-negotiables? For him, it's that effort and attitude, which I think is a really good non-negotiable. And he's saying it really doesn't matter what our X's and O's are. It's the effort and attitude and how we teach it. I love the idea of the X's and O's. He said your best X and O is not to have an X and O. And you have to have the X and O's. And if you've watched Maroa Forsyth, I know he's saying that, but they also run some really good offense. So they know their X's and O's. But it's nice to know that it's not the thing that is most important. The most important is, again, having that effort, having that attitude. And as we talked about in there, that grit is the word that he came up with. And I love that grit. It's real close to that word mettle that I love in mental mettle coaching, which is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. And that's just so important to be able to do. And I know that he really, really instills that in his guys. He runs a program that has a lot of expectations. He's really hard. I don't want to say hard on the kid, but he expects a lot of them, which I think goes, if you see a guy with his kind of record and his kind of success, it's almost a given that he's putting his team through that much effort, some adversity, and doing all that. I think it's a given. He's making them to learn these lessons and, again, face things head on. But then, as I'm starting to realize, and as I'm seeing more and more really good programs, I'm looking to a lot of them that I talk to. If you want to go look and listen to when I talk to Jennifer Hayes from Hartsburg Emdom, same kind of coach, really hard nosed, really expects everything out of her players. Okay. A guy like Dave Feeney, I had him on, and he expects a lot of his players, and they get after it. But all the ones that do that and are successful are also very in tune with the mental side of their players. They're viewing their players as this, and they're helping them in this holistic development. It's really important. It's not just the X's and O's. It's not just, learning adversity. It's helping them through it, recognizing that this stuff is really hard, and knowing that your coaching philosophy has X's and O's, and has these workout programs and these things that are black and white that you do, but then there's other things that you have to do, and paying attention to the mental health part of your athlete, and making sure that they know that you care about that, and you're helping them through that. The way I don't want to say shocked, but I was shocked when he talked about how he has a character coach, a guy who comes in to work with his players on their character, and he's helping them through things and bringing in speakers to do this. I don't know why I should be shocked, because again, he's very successful, and those things go together. He's bringing guys in, he's bringing women in to talk, to work with his players on things that have nothing to do with football and everything to do with life. It helps those boys know that he's on their side, that he's there to help them. And it's so refreshing to do things like that, and that he does the mental health survey. So he lets them know that they are being watched, or not watched, but cared for. It's so important. This was just been a great interview. If you are a young coach or a struggling coach, make sure that you take some notes, listen to it again, take some notes, go back to some other episodes of the Mettle podcast. This is for the coaches. There is something to learn, especially from a very successful coach. There's so many things you can learn. And that's the whole reason I created this podcast. So if you like these messages, if you like the ideas that are being put out there, don't be stingy with this stuff. Please like and share. It's not this stuff can help you get wins and help you have a successful program, obviously, but it's not about having a step ahead of the next guy. I want everybody to start to understand this stuff, and really have coaches lean into the holistic development of their players, and getting in touch with the mental side, and really understanding about how important that is, that we have to have this, where if we're going to put them through this physical adversity and this mental adversity, we have to have a way for them to an outlet for them, or for a way to connect with each other and with the coach, to be able to address the mental issues that will come up, right? So please like and share. Do what you can to support the Mettle podcast. Buy a sweatshirt, wear it around, tell people about it. It's a really cool sweatshirt. It really is. The blue one, the blue sweatshirt's pretty sweet. Have a look, order some, tell your friends about it. I appreciate so much you listening. This has been Coach Thomann. This has been the Mettle podcast. And don't forget, always forge your mettle. Thanks again for listening to the Mettle podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mettle podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mettle podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.